Hey everybody, my name is Dion and this is Daryl.
My name is Daryl.
Welcome to Where We Stand, a series where we talk about the games we've recently played and discuss how much we've enjoyed them. Today we're going to be talking about Psychonauts 2, which is available for the PS4, Xbox One, Xbox Series S and X, and the PC. Now that we're queued up and ready to go, let's get started.
Before we continue, you know how it is at this point. We're going to talk about our experience with Psychonauts 1, which you can find on our channel and another Where We Stand if you're interested in seeing that and hearing our opinions. But we're going to keep it as concise as we can for the sake of this, starting with how we felt about it in general. I know I just went over that again. Pretty fun to go over things twice. My general experience and the gist of Psychonauts for me personally, I really enjoyed the game. It was a lot of fun. Very quirky, and the mechanics held up surprisingly well for today, despite being a pretty old game. I don't remember when it came out originally, but it's been out since like what, the OG Xbox?
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, it's an old game, so we're showing our age here. Yeah, it was a really fun game with a really good cast and a great set of abilities, and the level design was just fantastic. What about you, Dion?
So I remember my biggest take from Psychonauts 1 was the theme. I think the theme was permeating throughout the game, throughout the levels, throughout the brains. You got the whole theme of the game. And so in addition to the platforming, which was, I think, pretty good. There were some bad spots, but mostly pretty good. It was a great experience, and it's a game from my childhood that I always loved. So let's take it away with our story overview. You play as Rasputin, also known as Raz, as he enters the Psychonauts internship program. Building on his basic psychic abilities used at the camp in the first Psychonauts, Raz must uncover a plot to destroy the Psychonauts. So, we're not going to go too detailed in the story, but just give a few of our thoughts. I thought Psychonauts 2's story was pretty enjoyable. You got a lot of twist, a lot of detail, way more detailed than number one. And I mean, you felt for the characters. I loved all the characters. It was very unique. I like how they brought in like your, in number one, you have your camp mates, and this one you have your intern mates. I like how you earn their trust and how that all works out. And then how you how you work with them moving forward. And that whole process, I thought they did such a really phenomenal job of using those characters, very unique characters, and making you feel for them and really taking us throughout the plot of the game, which I thought was excellent. I have really nothing more so than that. What are your thoughts, Daryl?
I thought overall the story was very, it was gripping. I'm not gonna lie. I thought to myself like, okay, the first game story, while not groundbreaking or anything like that, was enjoyable, so I didn't know how they were going to top it this time around. I will say that, first of all, I have a love-hate relationship with this. I was like, no, Hollis, I am a fucking psychonaut. You are not going to make me a damn intern, you piece of shit. And then she did. Anyway, I'm just like, oh, great. We're doing this where you say that we made it and then you backtrack, so we have more to have to do. Okay, I see what you're doing there. I wanted to punt half of the people in our internship class. I was like, okay, fuck you, Norma. Fuck you, Lizzie. You cool, Sam. But just moving along, just like, nah. But, you eventually fall in love with those characters as well as the others in the game. And you have returning characters as well that still hold up to this day. I say hold up as if they lose any kind of flavor that they have, but they're still as well written as they were in the first Psychonauts game. Overall, the story of Psychonauts 2 is a very enjoyable one. And if you're a fan of the first game, you're going to enjoy this one a lot. I'd say a lot more. There are definitely some surprises down the line that I'm not going to spoil here. That would take you for a loop.
Definitely. I also like to add that, the characters that you have, I think they did a good job of expanding those characters and their backstory. I think that was phenomenal. Like, that's amazing that they're able to bring these characters back 10 years, 15 years later and go through and expand on them that they haven't worked on for years. I think that's just absolutely phenomenal. And they also did a good job of just building the world in the game, bringing in Raz's family into the story. Yeah, I think that
I was surprised about that.
Very surprised. I heard about it a little bit ahead of time, but even seeing it, it was super cool that they brought that in. I think they just did a good job of expanding in this game.
Yeah.
So let's go over a little bit of the world design, which was, I believe, a strong part of Psychonauts 1. And that just continues here. They're able to hit it out the park. I even think harder this time. It's just unbelievable.
Oh, yeah.
So we could talk a little bit about the overworld. I'm not as impressed about the overworld. It's just the state of games these days that having that open world style in the front end is something that everyone does. I think it was graphically impressive.
It's a product of the time.
Yeah, exactly. It was impressive. It looked good. It was cool to explore. It's not as big as I expected, but there's definitely some secrets to find, multiple areas to go through. It wasn't anything special except for the look. It looked awesome.
Yeah. The world itself, the overworld, was actually really beautiful in the sand. And while it could have expanded out further, I'm glad they didn't, and they focused more on verticality and whatnot. Like, if you want to find that secret, you got to go up. Because Raz is an acrobat. He goes up. That's how it works. So a lot of that detail that you want to find and whatnot while you're exploring the world, you're going to have to look everywhere, because they're not afraid to put secrets in out of reach places that you're just like, how do I get up there? Where do I go? And whatnot. But let's move on to the brains portion of this section. So each level, much like in the first Psychonauts game, is specific to whoever's mind you're inside of. Without going too deep into the later levels and whatnot, I could at least talk about the first mind you enter, Hollis's mind, who she has like these inner traumas and whatnot about her past, about how she joined the Psychonauts to begin with and whatnot, and based on how she's feeling and the level shifts and whatnot. At first, it's a hospital based on her past and where she came from, because she used to be a brain surgeon of some sort, something along those lines. And then eventually, because of Raz does what he does, being a 10-year-old kid saying, I'm going to solve my problem and go on a Psychonauts mission with her permission, even if I have to tweak her memories or whatnot. He does so, and then her mind and perspective and whatnot shifts to that of I'm going to get lucky, I'm going to win. We're going on this casino mission where we have to do a mission out there. I believe it was like the Luctopus. At the Luctopus. You go to the Luctopus, and that's where the mission takes place, but her mind is strictly on gambling. The level reflects that and changes almost drastically. And it's really good. Actually, it's really good. And a lot of the other levels, the later levels, follow that, along with various gameplay differences that are attributed to each level, because every level has a gimmick of some sort.
Yep, I agree. We can talk a little bit more about the gameplay aspect a little later, but as far as just the design of the brains and what they did, it's phenomenal. I didn't think that they were going to take it further, and they did. They went further in every possible way to make those brains design uniquely different, and the theme is just, the theme of Psychonauts 1 was so strong, and then Psychonauts 2 is stronger. Like, I didn't think I'd be able to say that, but playing this game, I was like, wow, they really... you go into one brain, and that was the first brain. The first one you described is really the first brain that you're really going into, besides that introductory level. But then after that, it just goes further and further and further, and it gets crazier as you go. And I such a good job of really pushing that forward. Let's go a little bit into the leveling and customization. Just a small little detail about that. You have intern ranks, which takes the place of whatever the camp ranks were called. I don't remember the exact name, but it takes the place of that.
I don't remember them either.
Badges.
The badges make a return.
I don't remember the exact name, but badges make a return.
No, you were right.
And
the badges,
then you're able to upgrade abilities. That's back as well.
Although you couldn't do that in the first game, if I remember correctly.
Right. You're right. You could not do upgrading abilities. So that's a complete.
Can we upgrade in the first game? Upgrade your abilities?
So that's a whole new thing. So you had your basic abilities.
Yeah,
and now you're able to upgrade them all.
And this is gonna be a lead-in into gameplay. The leveling and customization I wasn't quite expecting to be like very fleshed out and this and that. I wasn't expecting like a full RPG spec board for Raz. So the little bit that you did get was appreciated for, especially for a game of its length and whatnot, with decent replayability. It doesn't go too far, you know, like for example, Raz can use the incineration or pyrokinesis ability, which I believe in the first game functioned a little differently, but in this one, it can envelop him, or you could put it along walls and whatnot to burn things in the environment. If you upgrade that ability, it'll burn hotter, well, hotter being do more damage, and it'll also expand around him and burning things in a wider radius and whatnot. That's just an example of how the abilities can upgrade and be changed for the sake of gameplay. It also gives Raz some form of customizability, because I'm sure there are things I focus more on than Dion did, and I didn't even finish unlocking all the abilities or not unlocking. I didn't finish getting all the final tiers of the abilities by the time I was done, but it really depends on what you cared about, really.
Right. You could pick and customize them. There's abilities that are better than others. And some take just too long, like level 102 for clairvoyance, which I heard is OP, by the way. But you can you can choose how you want your character to play. And I thought that was good. It actually fit, and you were able to, that little bit of customization is not too much to become an RPG, but it was just enough to really give you something to really think about and play with your character. And they were cool. They were actually like worth it. Right? And you really had to, I actually had to think about which ones I chose. I'm like, well, this fire ability is nice, but this time ability being AoE is even nicer. You know what I mean? So there was always a choice to be made, and you could kind of pick where you are. You didn't have enough to get everything unless you went back into the levels, I'm sure, which we didn't have time to do. So
we didn't, but we still came out of the game once we were done with more than enough to like get at least most of our abilities to like level 4 or 5 for some of them, the ones we really cared about. But moving along from that, we're going to start talking about gameplay, starting with like platforming, or I would say the general control scheme of the game in general. I'm sorry, what the heck was that? Like I get it. The game has to be modernized and updated, and its control scheme and whatnot. But I kind of preferred it when Raz would double jump, he had a set height he would hit. Like, okay, double jump, and then I could bubble into the levitation ability, which apparently I could tweak in the settings to get him to do that. But according to what a coworker of mine told me, if I'm remembering that right, but just the fact that if I tap the A button, Raz doesn't jump as high, and if I hold down the A button, Raz jumps relative, to his highest height. That threw me off so much. I have fallen off so many things because my perception of the environment and whatnot, especially when you have to like jump onto those beams or whatever that are like swinging, you have to jump for them. I'm like, okay, is this me jumping with a full A button or just a tap? I don't know. I've fallen so many times that I'm like, okay. If you played the first game, then it's going to take a little bit to get used to this control scheme, because again, it's not a new one to like platformers, but it's like if you played the first game a certain way and then you're trying to play this one the same way, it's not going to translate very well, if that makes sense.
No, I agree. That makes sense. I didn't actually have an issue with the control scheme platforming. It actually didn't bother me. And I don't know why. That's very interesting. I was able to make a lot of mistakes. Like you're saying, like if you're jumping to the swinging things were the biggest. Like it was hard to judge where it was and how you would make that jump. So I had that same issue. Yeah. So I would agree with that. I do, when it comes to the platforming, and this kind of plays in the combat as well, I do think assigning abilities was a difficulty. I hated when I had to switch abilities to my 3. That was annoying. I'm like, why can't we just have like 1 or 2 more keybounds or something just so I could use more at the same time and not be stuck?
I would have preferred if they were more passive. I would prefer if some of those abilities were passive, like the mental connection one. I never used that during combat. Outside of trying it the first time, I never used that ability to like yank an opponent near me or yank myself to an opponent or whatever. I only ever used it whenever I had to hit the mental thoughts floating in the environment so I could zip from one to another. I would prefer that to be passive, so that if I double jump and I don't know, lock on it or something, use a different thing or something like that, then I could like zip to it. And as long as I'm hitting A, I can zip to the next one and the next one, and the next one. I just feel like that could have been a passive ability and that would be fine, but you end up using that one a lot. I agree. I'm not a fan of having to switch my abilities that much, especially when you have a set kit that you want to use and whatnot for combat. It throws me off. But thankfully, you could do it on the fly during combat and standard. It's just you got to go through that menu a lot more than you might feel comfortable with, if that's the thing that bothers you.
Yeah, and it's very noticeable. I like even like a quick toggle would have worked. Like if you could just boom and you go combat, or if it automatically switched when you went to combat and platform, that would have been cool. I think the reason they don't have it automatically happen is because they're trying to capture that magic from Psychonauts 1 where you had to like figure out what ability you had to use, but it was much harder there than it is here. I think this is way more straightforward, which I appreciate. I'm sure other people don't. Let's talk a little more detail about combat.
I was going to say that this time around, combat is a lot faster. They have a lot more enemy types to deal with. So having to constantly switch over and over and over again, because it's faster, it just feels like, oh no, I got to swap to this real quick because this enemy's here. Got to swap to that because that enemy's there. Going to need a levitation because I got to get the hell away from that thing, and stuff like that. It makes it more frantic. But I don't know, you were going to go into more detail about combat and probably bosses. I think you could slot bosses into it at this point.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you on the combat. I thought it was definitely, it's nice to see the enemy variety. We haven't had a lot of enemy variety in the original. I think that was probably one complaint I would say about that game. In this game, you got it. And it wasn't an amazing variety, but it was enough to get me through the game and make me feel challenged all the way through. Especially when they had those dang cheer ones.
The enablers.
My gosh, yeah. I hated that. Anyway, it was a good. I struggled through fighting them all the time, so that always helped. I eventually found a way using the mental connection ability you don't use to bring them towards me and then freezing them. But you had to figure that out. I just
burned them and shot them while they ran around.
Yep, that also worked. I did that as well. So they did a good job of making it so you can take different ways to approach combat and fight, but you can't just like tap square the whole time and attack them, which I also appreciate. You had to learn to use the abilities so you don't die immediately. So I appreciate that. Which brings me to the bosses, which were all unique fights. I really enjoyed those. They were not difficult, I will say. You just had to, and this is similar to Psychonauts 1. It's not like it's different. They use that same philosophy. You had to figure out what abilities you needed to use, and then you could beat the boss. I think my favorite may have been the food boss, and that is all I'll say about it. But I think that is my favorite.
Yeah, that was a fun one.
That was
a fun level too.
It was, and you had to like figure out what the heck was going on with those things.
Very small, but it was very fun. Yeah,
yeah, it was great. Any specific thoughts you have on the boss battles?
Specifically, without getting into spoiler territory, they're all relatively straight up forward. If you ever fought, a platformer boss before in a video game and whatnot, if any game that has platforming as the main shtick and combat as a secondary, there are only so many things you could do with that. But it's really hard to get right, in my opinion, and this game does it right a lot of the time. A lot of those fights, even though I know we just finished the game recently, so obviously I'm going to remember them, but I think there are some fights there that I'm just going to remember randomly as I'm walking about outside one day sometimes, because they're very memorable fights, very stylish, very cool, and they put a lot more effort into some of those with who occasionally comes to help you sometimes, because sometimes you'll have those moments as well. I'm not going to go into spoilers about who will, but let's just say I almost want to jokingly say, if you like Persona 5, or Persona in general, and just how people could come in and help you out in the middle of combat, yeah, you're going to get some of that here and there.
Yeah, which was good.
And yeah.
So then
I think from there we can move on to our final thoughts, if that's fine.
Exactly. So final thoughts. For me, this game is a must play. You have to play this game. It's so, just the world design alone, just carries it for me. I think they did such a good job on the art and the style and taking you into the brains. I think it's just it's so good how they did that, and I love it. I think it was a great game, great experience. It's so worth it, especially with Game Pass. It's very hard for me to say, don't play this game or skip it. Now, as far as needing to play Psychonauts 1, it does take it off of Psychonauts 1. I think you get a lot of background, but you could skip it. You could skip Psychonauts 1 and play this game and still enjoy it and still feel satisfied, I believe, because the story is still all-encompassing. It still has a very good beginning, middle, end.
Sorry, you could also skip the VR game, which is the 1.5, the one that takes place between the two. It's the offhanded one where they mention rescuing Truman and whatnot. That's the middle game there. But as you were saying about your final thoughts.
Yeah, I didn't play it either. That one. Yeah, we can still so you can skip that too.
Yeah.
So it very good game. Very much worth playing. Very good platforming. The combat is decent enough, and I think it's definitely worth it to play it.
And in my case, Psychonauts 2 is definitely a must play if you're a fan of platformers and games like that. If you're a fan of Psychonauts 1, you probably don't even need my opinion. You probably already played and beat it several times already. It's that good of a game where I would definitely recommend it to just about anyone. It has the tongue-in-cheek humor of the first game and the addictive gameplay, as much as I don't like saying addictive in regards to gameplay, of the first game as well. I could very much say that it's Psychonauts 1 again, but improved and modernized for today. And that's sometimes it's all you need in a sequel. Then it's still freaking hilarious.
Definitely agree on the how funny it is. I didn't think about that. It is definitely funny. Definitely has some good moments there. And then I think it's hilarious that Coach is just there. And that's all I'll say about that. Yeah, he is just there. He doesn't really do anything. The fact that he's still part of Psychonauts. But that's all I'm going to say. Very good. Play Psychonauts 1. Well, already, I think that's all we've got for now. Thanks all for stopping through to listen here at DuoQ. If you think we might have glossed over something big, or feel free to say so in the comments. Don't forget to share and leave a like. Next time you're waiting for a party or searching for a lobby, feel free to tune in again while you wait. See ya!
Later. If anyone's in the mood for bacon, it's on me.